Hello, everyone. Welcome to wasmCloud Wednesday for Wednesday, February 7th. We've got a discussion-packed agenda today. Not starting off with a demo, but we do have two somewhat new in their new status community members in the call today. And I asked them before, and they were down to do an introduction. Marcus, would you like to introduce yourself, kind of what you do, how you found us, any amount of details. It's up to you.
Yeah, sure, sure. Hi, my name is Marcus. I'm pretty new to WASM and wasmCloud. I found you because I was looking for a bit cleverer and easier way to deploy software, and I'm learning Rust at the moment, and I'm to be honest, I'm a bit a victim of imposter syndrome because I'm not sure what I know. I'm not sure how much I know, but I'm really willing to invest some time and to learn a lot. And what I need to do now is start building, building, building. I can read another 1,000 pages, but will I try to build something from now on. Just get my hands dirty and just looking around and soaking up every information I can get.
Awesome. Well, really glad to have you. Glad to have you here, Marcus.
Okay, thanks.
We usually do a little. I try to do a section at the end of each community call. It's just like general time for questions, WebAssembly, wasmCloud. So if you have anything you wanted to tee up, just raise your hand when we get to that point.
Okay, thanks.
All right. I think and we have one more person that I'd love to give an introduction. Eric, would you like to go ahead?
Hey, yeah, I'm Eric Gregory. I joined Cosmonic last month as senior technical writer, and I've had a sort of hobbyist interest in the WASM space for a couple of years, so now I'm jumping in the deep end. So working on WASM Cloud documentation, working on some tutorializing types of content, and excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you folks so much for doing an introduction. It's really nice to, all of us know who the other people are on the call, and that's really fun. And thank you, Eric, for taking some of the notes for today's meeting. All right, folks. Well, let's get started with the discussion. So we've got a couple different things to talk about today. The first one, starting off, is around WASM or like WASI Preview 1 style modules in 1.0. And as we move forward to, oh, I didn't mean to do that. As we move forward to the 1.0 milestone, we've really been taking a look at the support that we have in wasmCloud for kind of our legacy WASM bus method of doing RPC with complex types. And the way that we're working on right now with WRPC so that we can do kind of component native communication over the lattice. Ultimately, we've landed on this notion that we want wasmCloud RPC to feel like composing components at runtime over this lattice, over this distributed network that we use to get done all this awesome like distributed computing stuff where components can live on different machines, they can talk to each other all the same as if they were composed together as kind of a fused WebAssembly component. And in this world, there are a lot of new concepts, including WebAssembly components, actually, even though we've had support for them for a while, it's still new. One aspect of it is unidirectional links, or I've started calling them, this is in a different proposal, started calling them interface links, where we're essentially linking on a WASI interface instead of a wasmCloud contract. And over time, we've started to realize that the method of doing RPC over WASM bus is essentially not the same mapping as this WRPC or component native world. It is completely different. And it's what we've been using for the past essentially 4 years since the very beginning of wasmCloud, since before wasmCloud was called wasmCloud. So when we're looking at 1.0, 1.0 offers a certain guarantee of stability in our APIs, the experience, the command line APIs, the control interface APIs. And so what we have been talking about around wasmCloud is launching 1.0 with just WebAssembly component support. This notion of using WebAssembly components, having them communicate over the lattice in kind of a component native way without the user needing to, the developer needing to bring in any RPC specific libraries. Actually, under the hood, what we're doing right now, I have this RFC sharing for a reason. What we're doing right now, we're calling a wasfill. That is literally what the function is called. But what we mean here is when an invocation comes in over WASM and we need to communicate with a component, we are doing a conversion into that component API. And one that is a layer of a level of efficiency that we lose, but it's also complicated and not extensible for generic component support. So as we're moving towards 1.0, we are looking to drop WASM support and just allow people to, just go forward with components, which I think we've all talked about for a long time, that using components gets us greater language support and greater conventional support with the WebAssembly standards. You bring in an example from outside wasmCloud and it just works out of the box. And so what I really wanted to tee up this discussion for today is any questions around that assertion when we move to 1.0, and to offer recommendations for folks going forward who have WASM bus RPC based applications, which is if you wrote your actor or your capability provider with Smithy, that almost certainly means that it is a WASM bus based app. So I have a little bit more to say there around what we are recommending, especially as it comes to wasmCloud 0.82, which should get a release candidate here maybe right now, like today. But I wanted to pause and ask folks if they had any questions, concerns, or things that they'd like to be cleared up.
Yes. Can I ask you, is this relevant? If I start from fresh now using components, this does not affect me, correct?
Exactly right.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. Great, thanks.
Yeah, so anybody coming into the ecosystem now, if you go through our documentation, through our quick start, all of the component examples here are, all of the component examples are getting essentially carried forward this structure. Now I have a little bit more to say there, but the component itself, it won't affect you in that regard. Bailey?
Is that,
Oh,
sorry?
Go ahead, Marcus.
Does that mean this one was Smithy and the new one is WIT, correct?
This one is actually WIT as well. All of the
As well,
component
okay.
examples are WIT.
Yeah, I mean the difference between this 1.0 stuff is this was Smithy and now we use WIT, correct?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. That's a big part of it.
I was going to chime in on one of the coolest things about this WRPC change is that a lot of the other platforms that exist for WebAssembly components require you to compile your component to a command style component. And what that means is that you export an API of run. Whereas with the design of this, with WRPC, you can actually build components with your own API. You can come up with your own custom interfaces. And that was one of the hardest problems that I feel like is solved by this design is how do we support, effectively custom WIT definitions and custom providers. And really the whole goal of components is to allow you to focus on your business logic, have an API that you want to export that makes sense for you instead of trying to shoehorn it into some of the existing pieces that are out there today. So I'm really excited to see this one evolve. I'm not working on it. I'm just kind of, rooting Brooks on over here.
Folks, other questions?
Brooks, just clarify, in the page you were on, you had Rust and then Rust component. Is that you gonna keep that on the page, or what's the?
Yeah,
For those who
great.
might have a question, what's the distinction between Rust and Rust component? Is Rust kind of the legacy part
Exactly.
and Rust components yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I kept this around right at the beginning of changing over the documentation to components just to, preserve some semblance of the old. But I think now that we've grown to having all these different languages, it's time. What we should probably just do is drop this tab and then drop the component suffix from all of these. That's where we're going. All right, folks. Well, then, if there are no other questions, I'll do a little spiel. So if you think of one, feel free to jump in. I just wanted to note that if you look at all of our component examples, we've got this big, warning. Component examples are experimental. You may need to recompile these as you go from version to version. And so it was really important for us to be clear about when you need to recompile your application when it comes to wasmCloud, because that is essentially one of our core tenets of the project, is that you shouldn't have to recompile your application unless you wanted to change a feature or a piece of your business logic in your app. And over the last 4 years, I actually went this morning just to prove this notion. We have kept the same API in wasmbus essentially since before the I won't put it in relative terms, at least since 2021. You can take the Echo example that we wrote and published in our Azure CR. It was mid 2021, and you can run it in the Rust wasmCloud host that we, just unveiled a couple of months ago. And so I just want to speak to the track record of the project around keeping things in a non-breaking state and really, really keeping true to that notion that you shouldn't have to recompile your app. And so it is kind of a big deal that on this community call, I'm saying, hey, you should recompile your app into a component. But it is something that we knew was coming for the good of the ecosystem, and just want to be really transparent about that, because that is a core tenet of the project. The end of that really just points people towards the wasmCloud 0.82 release, which is coming, like I said, at least a release candidate should be coming out a little bit later today. That will include all of the bindings to WASI Preview 2. So, WASI-IO, WASI HTTP, the other ones, that I'm forgetting right now. Wow. All of the WASI Preview 2 APIs that were stabilized and made official will be in wasmCloud 0.82 alongside the newer wasmTime version. So that is a great point of stability to begin building your wasmCloud apps on top of components if you haven't already made that move already. Now, we are going to have some discussion around that, because these component examples, let me go ahead and show you why we have why we have the admonition saying, hey, component examples might break, is because if you look, for example, at the TinyGo code, we're building all of our component examples off of the just before 0.20 our release candidate, which was our other version of wasmTime. So with 0.82 comes updates to all these interfaces to just be 0.20. So in the TinyGo code, for example, we're dropping this suffix. So you will want to refer back to this page if you've been working on the hello, the example components. All in all, the quick start stuff goes through pretty quickly, so you could always just run through that part again. But WASI 0.20 is that relative point of stability that we can always offer the backwards compatible notion about, which is again a key part of us pushing towards 1.0 is that level of stability. So more to be said there in future community calls, I'm sure. But does anybody have any other questions here at the end of that first discussion part? All right, well, I think we can go ahead and move on. Then our next discussion is around wasmCloud Olama, which some of you in the Slack or anybody in the Slack should have seen. Iceper put this link this project in earlier today and may have been surprised. So if you haven't seen any work coming from Iceper actually started as in the wasmCloud project, proposing this thing called wasmCloud. It was Kubernetes wasmCloud, kind of an experiment around managing wasmCloud resources. And it was a great perspective around, we have a way that we suggest doing things in wasmCloud to connect into Kubernetes. But what would like a more native implementation possibly look like? And so Iceberg's been doing things in the wasmCloud space for, many months now. And I did talk to him briefly about doing a demo of this application. I would love to actually get that going forward in a future community call. But I don't want to hold back talking about an experiment as cool as this before that. So I was taking a look at this morning. The wasmCloud and Olama essentially allows you to use wasmCloud to interact with a large language model. And you can use kind of WebAssembly, a WebAssembly component API to communicate with that LLM, even if you're not located on the same machine as that LLM, which is ultimately, we've talked about this in terms of inference, which we've shown examples with wasmCloud. Christoph Brewing spearheaded a lot of this about a year ago with Onyx and TensorFlow models. And this is an example with a large learning model. So different types of machine learning and AI stuff. The really cool thing about this is that your logic can run on a specific wasmCloud host, and your really beefy node with GPUs and all the computing power can run in a different location. So when you're doing more heavyweight inferencing or LLM things. So I will send I link to this in the community agenda right in line. I'll send this in the Zoom chat as well for folks who want to take a look here. I can't promise to know everything about this project, but it is a really cool application of wasmCloud. And so I thought it would be a missed opportunity to not bring it up and let us talk about it. If you wanted to take a look at how this is actually working, there is a WIT world here for Olama, which just includes some of the information around the structures that the application needs. And then Iceberg has done a really cool thing with the adapter pattern for components by specifying an adapter, which is essentially take that custom interface for Olama and turn it into wasmCloud bus calls that the wasmCloud host can understand, which is a really cool application of using a component adapter to let it run in wasmCloud, even though that distributed kind of WRPC support isn't quite there yet. So as we get closer to 1.0, I'm really interested to see how this WIT world may change when it comes to how the components will talk over the lattice. But I just wanted to do a call out for folks to take a look at this project. It's really cool. Anybody have any questions that I will try to answer about this this Olama example?
Brooks, I haven't been to one of these in a while. What do we like? What's the whole state with large language models? And is there anything like? Is there some more context maybe people could? And where does this fit in with large language models in wasmCloud?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when it comes to like the general broader state of LLMs and wasmCloud, we don't have any official support for like a large language model in the wasmCloud ecosystem. Essentially, our approach up to this point has been like wasmCloud totally has the capability to take advantage of large language models. You just use a capability provider that can interface with one, and then you can expose that to your components. And so I think this is a perfect embodiment of that idea that, by bringing in a provider to implement this interface, you can make use of a large language model. Now, just to maybe extend that one little bit and then go back to you, I think the wasmCloud, the wasmCloud style recommendation is that this is really tightly bound to Olama, possibly. I mean, at least is in naming, and that's totally fine. You can always have a very specific contract. If we wanted to take advantage of some of the capabilities around like hot swapping from one language model to another, maybe that's on the provider level, like internally, but it would be cool to have insert other large language model here as something that you could hot swap in to maybe do like really lightweight language requests at the edge that uses a smaller model, for example.
Yeah, and so for the whole component thing, Bailey, sorry if I don't want to hijack. Where does wasmNN come in with the component model? Where are we? Sorry,
Yeah,
wasmNN being kind of the interface for machine learning workloads.
yeah,
I don't know, what still is a lot still needs to be done there, or is it because wasmNN came out well before we were talking about the component model, and I didn't know.
true. Yeah. So YZNN stands for neural network. That's the NN part. It is championed by Andrew Brown, who every once in a while shows up in our community. He's amazing. So shout out to Andrew. Last week he gave an update on this. So we've got a WIT definition now, YZNN. The thing that is required for any one of these individual proposals to move through the phase process is to have 2 reference implementations, verbose set of tests and that sort of thing. I believe we do actually have some completionists, so to speak, on Whammer and wasmTime both having a WasmN implementation. I don't know that the test suite is necessarily where we want it to be, and the main thing that hasn't happened yet is that it hasn't moved through the phase process within the subgroup. But to be fair, we were like, hey, let's focus on the things we need to do to get .2 out the door, and then we'll take on some of these other worlds right after. So I kind of expect that to move through. Now, an important thing to recognize about wasmNN that makes it pretty different from some of these others, especially like wasmHP and wasmCLI. When I say these others, those are the other 2 worlds that are part of .2. wasmNN has an API where it basically says, this is the type of tensor that I need to run, this is the type of driver. So there's like a lot to it for a host to provide an implementation that makes wasmNN work. In a lot of ways, you could say that it's not portable, because it's basically like, no, literally, I need this type of GPU with this type of stuff installed inside the host to make it work. I also feel like the breadth of the types of software that you have to install to make some of the, TensorFlow and other things run, you want to have a solution that provides a type of sandboxing for it, but none of that can compile to WebAssembly. You can compile applications that target wasmNN that let you write application code that then can run tensors on hardware. But that doesn't give you the sandboxing of WebAssembly, right? Only of the business logic. So I think the average wasmCloud user would need a more advanced approach to be able to support WASINN. And so that's why one of the major sessions that I ran last week was around let's make sure that we have a solution for host components effectively, or host plugins is another word that we've been throwing around. Got lots of them. And Alex Crichton is going to be leading up a lot of that work inside WasmTime that lets us supply plugins, that let us manage some of this kind of stuff in a way that doesn't expand the trusted compute base of WasmTime, aka let's not like bake in TensorFlow inside of WasmTime, for example. So today we don't have a WASINN support inside wasmCloud. But the way that I think that that would look is you would write a provider that supports the WASINN API. You would need to make sure that it's sandboxed in some way. That would be on you as the operator of the wasmCloud deployment. And you would be able to take advantage of WRPC, of basically our provider SDK that works with WRPC, so that you can have a component that's making WASINN calls and is sending that right information to the provider. This is a lot of words to say. wasmCloud is a great application platform, and you can write apps that use LLMs or not. We're sort of agnostic to that, and we can support all kinds of different types of hardware-driven APIs, including WASINN. If somebody is motivated to do so, happy to help do that contribution.
Yeah, but it sounds like a little bit of that's what happened here with the Olama thing. Is that?
I don't know that it's using WASINN.
Oh, okay.
A lot of these are like a single inferencing API call, the way that it's packaged. So you can kind of you can go real far with something simple. Right. So
I
he
see.
did or he didn't. I don't know, Brooks.
Looks like he didn't.
Well, let's see what this looks like. I think Iceberg has worked on a WASINN type
Eek.
adapter and everything. It looks like he's kind of just, well, I'm inferring this from the folder called hack, but it looks like he's just kind of hacking around. And this is where he was able to make progress towards the example. Yeah, to be super explicit, I think this is a really cool example for like using components and an LLM. But I'm not saying that this is like the end all be all recommendation for how you do things. There's one thing I really like about how Iceberg has been willing to propose things with a concrete working example. So you're like, hey, look at how cool this is, and it works, and you can try it. It's pretty cool. For what it's worth, Iceberg is also in a time zone where he is sleeping right now. So that is the primary reason that it's difficult for us to all be on the same community call, and I don't want to try to make him stay up until late in the night, early in the morning to hop on.
But I do want to highlight, I love the diagram that he made here. Since it shows that we're basically able to load models and distribute them in a way that it doesn't necessarily have to be running on the user device or edge. But you can get it to the nearest edge without giving away your critical parameters, the thing that you spend all your money on training to come up with the right pieces that you pass into your model. Those are the things that are really expensive that in other solutions, Olama aside, because that one's already kind of well defined, but if you have your own custom model, that might not be something you want people to be able to run on their edge. And so by being able to use wasmCloud for it, you're able to come up with the right distribution story for your model, which I think is really cool.
Cool. I think that there's plenty more to talk about in the AI slash LLM space. It's very hot right now. So if we can get something together to put maybe a concrete demo of this, or further along like the WASI implementation, I think that would be really cool to bring up in the community call. It's not something that I have looked at in depth personally. I'll just say. Any other questions, discussion items around the wasmCloud Olama project stuff? Alrighty. Well, then I think we can go ahead and move into the last planned agenda item, which is just looking at the progress on the 1.0 roadmap. I'm doing everything in a different space, so why don't I go all the way through the normal open source way. Let's take a look at the 1.0 milestone as it stands today. I'll just zoom out a little bit. This is fine. Let me know if anybody has trouble seeing these specific things. But we've been making really, really great progress towards the 1.0 milestone. We officially have more in the completed column than we have to do, so I will take that. The primary large pieces of work that we have to do for the milestone is in progress, which really revolves around the implementation of the WRPC protocol and the integration into the wasmCloud host. A big part of that, as detailed in the componentizing links RFC, is around essentially doing interface links between two different components, whether it's an actor or a provider, in a directional way on a WASI interface instead of doing kind of a bidirectional wasmCloud contract. And some of the other changes there, which you can read a little bit more in the RFC, but I have started on that work, and I think I have a branch out there, but don't look at it. There's too many to-dos and things that we're working on there now. Taylor has also taken up a lot of the work around, formalizing the control interface. So swapping topics around to a nice, consistent format. Updating some of those payloads and some of the internal host things to make it all nice and clean. I think Taylor has a PR out there now, which is pretty much it's ready for review and all looks great. We've just got a couple of questions around testing methodology because all of the topics changed. And then there also is a PR out there for instrumentation or OTel metric instrumentation in the wasmCloud host. Let me actually, instead of just talking, bring those up. Those are, where are you? So here is the update topics to the new standard is the one that implements formalizing the control interface. And then Jonas has opened up a PR for adding initial support for metrics. You may have missed it. It merged in a little bit earlier this week, but Connor actually put in a PR to add support for OTel log exporting over an OTLP exporter URL. So with the metrics piece, we're actually wrapping up the effort of making wasmCloud completely OTel observable, which is a huge feature that we are pushing for in 1.0, such that if you have OTel infrastructure, you can, an OTLP exporter configured or collector, then you can simply give that collector URL to wasmCloud and we'll export traces, logging, and metrics there, which will be really sweet. I have it planned, but not completely ready on as far as a specific date, but that is a demo that I'd like to do at the beginning of one of our next community calls to show an example of a dashboard that shows some gauges and counters and shows logs, and then alongside traces has the logs with that actual specific trace. It's all really, really awesome stuff. And for anybody who's looking in the from the cloud native perspective, just plugs into your existing observability toolchain, infrastructure, ecosystem, one of those words. Pick the one that best fits you. Other than that, I've moved a couple of things out of blocked, but not quite in ready for work around pinning WIT definitions and wasmCloud core WITs to 1.0. This will be one of the last things that we do right before we cut the 1.0 release, just because when we version it at 1.0, that commit, I don't want to do that and then continue to change the WITs if we have a change that we'd like to make to the interface. Dropping the deprecated wasmbus.abt topic will be ready for work as soon as 0.82 is out, because that is that kind of gives us enough time to update to, I think it gives us a minor version of overlap, and then now 0.82, I believe, is just publishing the events that do not have that, the deprecated topic. And last but not least, dropping the we've already actually dropped the requirement to sign actor components with capability claims. This last piece here is going to be around removing the signing mechanism entirely. So we'll be dropping it from our examples and from the WASH CLI capabilities. Overloaded word. The ability for WASH to sign with capability claims, because they won't be used anymore. And for clarity, for anybody who hasn't taken a look at this RFC, the reason why we can do this is because we have all the information about what the component is going to try and do at runtime in the WIT. We no longer need this notion of capability claims to know that. So really awesome stuff. Looking in the blocked column, these things need a little bit more scoping or depend on completion of other efforts. And right now, none of these things here look like they are blocking other efforts. So we'll come back and approach that a little bit later. Does anybody have any questions for our regularly scheduled roadmap update time? Everybody's favorite time of the community call, I'm sure. Sweet. All right, folks. Well, I think that's the end of the planned agenda for today. Appreciate all the discussion, question, comments, all that stuff. Should be back to doing a demo next week as we regularly do. Well, now we've got a little bit of time. I think this is good a time as any to open it up for questions. If folks have general wasmCloud questions about stuff we talked today, or just other things in the ecosystem, or things that they wanted to talk about around general WebAssembly standards, WASI Preview 2, now is a great time. So raise your hand or just jump in. Doesn't really matter.
I just wanted to call out Eric has got a couple blog posts on the Bytecode Alliance site, if they weren't mentioned yet, about the Plumber Summit that was last week for day 1 and day 2. If you didn't have a chance to catch the live streams, there is a sort of helpful just summary of some of the exciting things that were discussed for next year. I was down in Raleigh with Bailey, where she did an incredible job hosting, I think, many of the folks from the WebAssembly community last week. And there was also an open Zoom where folks could dial in. It was streamed to YouTube as well. And I think that is linked in there for now. So folks should really take an opportunity to enjoy some of those discussions. And Eric, I think, crushed the summaries there, which is great. Schedule is live for KubeCon Wasm Day, of course. So we'll see those folks. That will be in Paris in 5 weeks. Gosh, almost there. And then, of course, schedule's live for God, what is it called? Right before.
WasmIO.
Thank you, WasmIO. Right before. So we've got a lot of fun stuff, and we are getting ready to open up CFPs for WasmCon. So all the Wasm things all the time. So if you weren't sick of Wasm yet, just wait.
They're really good times. You can make it. I guess
be
it'd be
really fun.
good because you could do Barcelona and then go right to Paris. Is that what you're all doing?
Yeah, that's what we're
All
doing.
right. I don't know if I want to put people's travel plans on YouTube, but yeah.
Well, it's pretty obvious where we're going to be. Search our names, and there we are.
Yeah, that's great. What hotel are you staying at? Do you know your room number yet?
Anyway, I also wanted to point out, I've been trying to cross-pollinate this across the different things I'm in. I wear 3 different hats. I contribute lightly to the Bytecode Alliance stuff and talk to most of the people there. I have my wasmCloud hat and I have my CNCF hat. This is me doing my CNCF hat to let the wasmCloud community know. We are working on something to standardize WASM components inside of OCI. If you're interested in following along with this effort, there is the WG-WASM channel inside the CNCF Slack. It's the WASM working group, part of the tag runtime. And I'm one of the chairs over there of that with people from a couple different companies. And we're all working on it with everyone in the community to work on a bunch of different things and kind of like knowledge share. But one of the big key things that we're working on right now is that OCI thing. So keep an eye out for that. I'm just letting people know in case it interests you. It's not really going to impact anything, and any changes in wasmCloud will actually be just underneath like wash. But like though that's a cool thing. If you're doing things with WebAssembly, especially with components, you'll be able to use OCI registries to store them and store specific metadata alongside of them so things can be used by the runtime. So that's going on, as well as after KubeCon, a couple white papers and other things that will be landing. And also, this is where it kind of overlaps because a lot of the CNCF people are involved in this too. wasmCloud. wasmCloud is being worked on actively and starting to speed up right now. We probably won't see a lot of them fully landing until after KubeCon, but the first drafts of these things will be in a usable state here soon. We've had Joe's been here in our community for a long time. He's not here at the call today, but Joe's been heading up a lot of that. I've been joining him and helping him out. So just wanted to keep people informed that that's going on. If you want any more information, feel free to ask around. But those will be kind of standardizing those contracts and those interfaces. Those interfaces will roll into wasmCloud eventually as well. And then your components will technically be portable between pretty much any platform that implements it, which should be most people, given what we're trying to do right now. So just wanted to give people the update on that and keep the cross-pollination going so people know what's happening.
Hey Taylor, I thought that wasmCloud already used OCI. How's the OCI work different?
Why, thank you, Bailey Plant. I mean, Bailey. And so the difference now is right now we use just a plain like artifact. Everything's like put into a single layer and then it's just stored there. It's very dumb. It's being used as, hi, I'd like to get an artifact, please. Okay, thank you. And then every platform has to know what you do. And if you look at the code for everybody that's doing it, Spin does this, we do this. I think wasmEdge might do it. Like there's all the platforms that are doing this, they all have their own like types for what the artifact is. And it's just kind of free willy out there. Everybody can do what they want, which works fine. But the idea is these components are going to be shareable. Components that you run on wasmCloud should compose with something else running on another platform. And so what this will let you do is store it. First off, the key thing that will come first is the metadata part of this. We're still deciding what that metadata is going to look like, but the metadata will have things possibly like, oh, here's the world and the exports and imports for it. And so that way you can search, someone can grab that and index it and you can search off of it. It might also have other like important runtime details that could be passed in for your runtime. So for us, we might take some of those details and know like what we need to do to fill things in. There's a whole bunch of details we have to talk around it, but that metadata is the first thing that's going to be different. That's going to be a standard set of metadata that anybody can use. So that means you push your component and you were working, like with plain WASM time, and now you want to try out wasmCloud, it doesn't change. You don't have to repackage anything. It just pulls it down. The other thing that it's going to support, which is important for those running their own registries or paying for their own registries, it's going to support the exploded view of components. Now, components, right, are a component may be made up of multiple components, which themselves could be made up of multiple components. And there's this idea of what people have called lovingly the exploded view, where you can pull it all out and say like, here's all the individual pieces that make up my thing. So this allows you to have each of those components be its own layer inside of the OCI manifest. And then those manifests can be those layers can be reused across the different things. So it allows for the deduping that already happens with like a normal Docker image, but also lets it so you can have that exploded view and then be able to implode, explode, do whatever you want with it from there. So there's going to be some interesting functionality down the line. The first and most important is being the metadata and having a standard way we're all storing it up there rather than all with our own content types.
So a native solution in OCI for components. Sounds really cool. Thanks,
Yep.
man.
And so that is an extension to OCI, not like an extension API or anything. It's just the OCI people say, yes, you're spec compliant, and then that's all we need. And so then we have our own thing that we all adhere to as WebAssembly runtimes and operators and those kind of things.
Well, Taylor, I dare say that probably deserved a full discussion bullet because it is really good information for folks to know. But as it keeps moving forward, maybe we can do a little in the weeds terminal OCI demo. That'd be fun.
When it gets close, I might pull up the actual manifest and show people what it looks like and what it means we're going to be able to do, just so people can see it. It's not like OCI is a little bit, what's the right word for it? It's a bit daunting and it's kind of hard to track down where, but once you understand where it's at, the actual like JSON representation of the format is really straightforward. So it'd actually just be beneficial even to show like what an example manifest would look like and why that's important.
Checking for my own understanding, Taylor, no matter the implementation of the common standard, this isn't a requirement to do before wasmCloud 1.0 because we could just still continue to support like the wasmCloud artifact type and all that. Okay.
Yeah,
great.
100%. And I think that's what everybody's going to do. But the nice thing about this is like the goal is to have it done in the next month or two. We don't want to dilly-dally. We want to get this done and out there so people can put it into their platforms. So we ain't messing around. We're trying to get this just ready for people to use. And the Bailey just asked, for those who are on live stream, do you expect the update to the standard OCI thing to be transparent to wasmCloud users? And the answer to that is going to be yes, specifically for what Brooks was saying. We would support both. So anything you already pushed will still be able to be pulled. And that's just inherent in how OCI works. We'll be able to pull and see what the manifest type is. We'll see our special type and go, okay, well, we know to do this. If we pull it and see the standard type, then we'll use the standard thing. And so it will be very, very simple and straightforward. Users, you will not know. In fact, it'll probably change out from underneath you with the like wash push to be the new style, and you won't even have to worry about it. So it's going to be extremely easy to manage that. It's just more letting people know that work is happening. And I'm assuming things will grow out of that because OCI doesn't have an indexing spec or anything like that. So there'll be tools and things built around it to help us search for the different types of things that you might need. Hey, I need this interface, or I need this interface, or whatever might be going on. Okay, Senor Brooks, back to you.
All right, Senior Brooks with the weather. Anybody else have topics that they wanted to bring up? General WASM ecosystem or wasmCloud? All right, folks. Well, then I think I might give everybody a couple minutes back. We'll go ahead and drop it here. I don't think that there's anything super special to sign off with, but looking forward to seeing you all next week on February 14th, regularly scheduled community call, all that good stuff. please reach out to me in Slack if you have discussion topics or a demo that you'd like to queue up. Like Victor and Stuart's awesome demo last week was just them saying, "Hey, I got a cool thing I want to demo. Can I do that?" The answer is almost always yes. So please feel free to reach out. Oh, we do.
Kevin,
All right. Well,
that's literally what I was about to ask. You know, do we have a special Valentine's Day demo planned? Care Bear stare?
we're gonna discuss the implications of a Valentine's Day dinner in wasmCloud After Dark dinner. Wow. Okay.
Valentine's WasmCloud After Dark. I mean, I kind of want like
what a way to end this meeting, Brooks. You should just end it while we're on this high note.